In my opinion, when you read this question, it's a perfect question for around Halloween because I think it's one of the scariest looking questions you will see during the year. You're like, we've got an angle alpha and an angle beta, and there are tons of information that's given, and you're supposed to find sine alpha minus beta. Just the amount of wording in the question seems scary. The fact that there's two angles seems scary, but I will tell you that once we learn how to do this question, they're easy to recognize because they look scary at first. So you're going to be able to say, oh, it's a scary one. We're going to name it so that whenever we name a question, so you see scary, and we're going to name this a double triangle question because that's the main strategy we're going to use to figure out this question. Then this question really becomes quite a bit easier to do. So it looks scary because we have two angles. In all of these double triangle questions, they start off like our normal triangle questions. You get a trig function. We've got cos of alpha is -3/5. You will get another piece of information that tells you what quadrant that angle alpha is in. Sometimes it's really direct, like in this one, where's alpha? Quadrant 3. It tells us right in the question. Sometimes it will be a little bit more obscure, like they might tell you that sine of alpha is less than 0. So because cos of alpha is negative and sine of alpha is negative, according to your cast rule, you would also know it's in quadrant 3. So it's a double triangle question because you're going to take your first angle, which is alpha. You know it's in quadrant 3, so you draw it in quadrant 3 with your reference angle for alpha. What can I label on that triangle? Well, since I know that cos alpha is -3/5, which sides can I label? The adjacent side would have to be 3. The hypotenuse would have to be 5. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Do you recognize this one? 4. This one's 4. Beautiful triangle. So pretty. 3, 4, 5. So we're able to make our alpha triangle and figure out all of our sides. Do we also have enough information for our second triangle? In what quadrant is beta? Okay, and again, this one is really direct in telling you. So we can draw an angle in quadrant 2. We can label our reference angle. And just like every triangle question we've done so far, when you draw your angle, when you make your triangle, it's always back to your nearest x-axis because that's where your reference angle is. Now for sine, 1/3, well that's going to be, opposite's going to be 1, hypotenuse is going to be 3. What's my other side? Square root of 8. So you should be pretty good at doing a squared plus b squared equals c squared in your head. And in this case, you're going to get the square root of 8. So we've drawn both of our triangles. And we want to find the exact value. So exact value means that we've drawn both of our triangles, and we've been asked to find the exact value of sine alpha plus beta. Now, this is supposed to trigger for you one of these formulas. In this question, if you wanted to find out what alpha was, you could find out what alpha is, but you would need your calculator. You need to find your reference angle with your calculator using your triangle, and then for alpha, you would do 180 plus alpha if you were in degrees, or pi plus your reference angle if you were in radians. But because it's an exact value, and this would be a non-calculator question, you wouldn't be able to figure out alpha. And you wouldn't be able to figure out beta. So we'll never know what alpha and beta are in this question, but we can still figure out what sine of alpha plus beta is. Now with our new formulas, sine of alpha plus beta, you go to your formula sheet, You look it up. It's equal to sine of alpha cos of beta plus cos of alpha sine of beta. So it's equal to 4 things all put together, multiplied and added. So if we go to our triangles, can you see that you already know what sine of alpha is? What is sine of alpha? 4 over 5, positive or negative? Negative, because it's in quadrant 3. And we were told, I mean, you can see it from your triangle as well, but we were also told in the question that cos of alpha was negative 3 over 5. So you now know what sine of alpha is, and you know what cos of alpha is. Here in our beta triangle, well, we were already told what sine of beta was, and you could see that from your triangle, and now you could also say, I know what cos of beta is, and since it's in quadrant 2, it's going to be negative. So the double triangles, or your 2 triangles, give you all the information that you need to plug into your formula. When you're doing this, okay, you have to ask yourself, do I know what alpha is? Or do I know what sine of alpha is? Right here, I know sine of alpha is negative 4/5. So that means I can replace the whole sine of alpha with negative 4/5. Okay? The common mistake is people continue to write the sine and put the 4/5 inside. This. So if you made that mistake, you wrote the sine again, you don't know what alpha is. But you do know what all of sine alpha is. So you replace all of sine alpha with negative 4/5. You replace all of cos beta with negative root 8 over 3. Plus, you replace all of cos alpha with negative 3/5. And you replace all of sine beta with 1/3. So for those of you, when we did the survey, that made that common mistake of, in this next line, you wrote sine, negative 4/5, cos, make a note of that. How are you going to stop your gut reaction from doing that on a quiz? Okay? Set an alarm during the quiz that'll remind you. Wouldn't that be, yeah, you have all these triggers of sounds, so that during every quiz, there'd be, everybody's phone would be making different sounds to remind them to do different things at different times. Be just like a zoo in here. Nice. And now we need to find our exact answer. So to find our exact answer, we have to write our answer as a single fraction. Is this a single fraction right now? No. We would have to multiply here. This is going to be negative times negative is positive. Multiply the tops, 4 root 8 over 15 plus a negative 3 over over 15. This is still not a single fraction. We have a common denominator, so we have to add the top. It's going to be all over 15. Remember how to add fractions. How do you add 4 root 8 minus 3? You can just write 4 root 8 minus 3. Those are not like radicals or like terms, so that's the best you can do. But you do need to write it as a single fraction in the end. So these are our double triangle questions. Okay? And yeah, they're not, like I said, they look the scariest, but they all are answered this way. So you recognize alpha, beta, you're finding an exact value of sine alpha plus beta or cos alpha plus beta, whichever one it is, draw both of your triangles and then plug it in. But be aware of this step because that's where that common mistake is made. Yes? No. So you know how you don't have to, it's a good question. You don't have to simplify your fractions. If you end up with 4 over 6, you can leave it like that. You don't have to simplify it to 2/3. That's new for grade 12. New for grade 12, when you had 5 over the square root of 3, you didn't have to rationalize your denominator, right? They assume you know how to do that. Same thing with radicals. Square root of 8 is 2 root 2. That's in simplified form. They assume you know how to do that. You can leave your answer with your radicals unsimplified. So that's another nice thing about grade 12. But in a multiple choice question, they probably would have simplified it. So you still need to know how to do it so that you can get it right in multiple choice. On the pre-quizzes, you have to simplify. Yes, you could, because this is equal to, so on your pre-quiz, they would write this as 8 root 2 minus 3 over 15. Because the square root of 8 is equal to, you know, this is how you would show your work. Square root of 8 is square root of 4 times square root of 2, and square root of 4 is 2. So square root of 8 is 2 root 2. If I multiplied 2 root 2 times 4, I would get 8 root 2. And so this would be what your answer key would probably say, but you could leave it in either form.